The IRS agent slid a manila folder across the table toward me. We were sitting in a conference room on the fourth floor of the Federal Building in downtown Tulsa. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, the kind of room where bad news comes to live. "Mr. Dunning," she said, "you reported $127,000 in income last year that we have no record of taxes being paid on." I opened the folder. Inside were loan applications, bank statements, tax documents. My name was on every single one of them, my social security number, my home address. But the signature at the bottom of that loan application, that wasn't mine. It was close, real close. Whoever did it, it practiced. But I've been looking at documents for 30 years. I know my own handwriting the way I know my own face in the mirror. "That's not my signature," I said. The agent studied me for a long moment. "Then whose is it?" I could have answered her right then. I could have given her a name, pointed a finger, let the chips fall where they may. But that's not how I do things, never has been. When you've spent 3 decades tracking down people who don't want to be found, you learn something important. You don't just collect information, you build a case, you make it airtight, and you wait for the right moment. So I looked that IRS agent in the eye, and I said, "Give me 3 weeks, I'll bring you everything you need." What happened in those 3 weeks? I'll tell you all of it. But first, you need to understand how a man who spent his whole career finding people who were hiding ended up getting played by someone right under his own roof. If you're watching this and you're over 50, you already know. The world thinks we're easy targets. They think we're slow, out of touch, vulnerable. Subscribe to John Vengeance if you're ready to prove them wrong. Now let me show you how I did exactly that. My name is Earl Dunning. I'm 55 years old, and for the past 28 years, I worked as a skip tracer out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if you don't know what a skip tracer does, let me explain. When someone skips out on bail, when a deadbeat dad disappears to avoid child support, when a witness vanishes before trial, when an heir to an estate can't be found, that's when people call someone like me. I find the unfindable. I track down the ones who don't want to be tracked. It's not glamorous work. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of database searches, a lot of sitting in parking lots watching doors. But I was good at it, built a reputation over almost 3 decades. Defense attorneys knew my name, insurance companies had me on speed dial. I testified in court more times than I can count. The money was steady, not great, but steady. Connie and I were careful with what we earned. Paid off our little 3-bedroom ranch house on the east side of Tulsa, put both our kids through school, stacked away about $340,000 in savings and investments over the years. Nothing fancy, just 2 people who believed in working hard and living within their means. Connie. Lord, I need to tell you about Connie. She was my high school sweetheart. Married her when I was 23 and she was 21. 32 years together. She kept the books for my business, raised our kids while I was out chasing leads across 3 states, and never once complained about the long hours or the odd phone calls at midnight. When I came home tired and frustrated after losing a trail, she'd pour me a cup of coffee and say, "You'll find 'em tomorrow, Earl. You always do." She was the steady one. I was the hunter. Together, we made it work. Then COVID came. Christmas 2022. My brother Ray's ex-wife was hosting the family gathering at her place. Ray himself hadn't shown his face in 15 years, walked out when his son Travis was 12. But Marlene, she kept the family together. It was supposed to be a good night. The kids were there, the grandkids, everyone laughing, passing plates of food around. Connie started coughing on New Year's Eve. By January 3rd, she was in the hospital. By January 7th, she was in the ICU. And by January 14th, she was gone. I couldn't even hold her hand at the end. Hospital restrictions. They let me stand outside the glass and watch her take her last breath through a window. 55 years old, and I felt like someone had cut me in half. After the funeral, the house went quiet in a way I can't really describe. 32 years of her voice in those rooms, and then nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock on the wall. My son Brian, he's 31 now, electrician up in Kansas City. He called every Sunday to check in on me. My daughter Lisa, she's 28, teaches 4th grade right here in Tulsa. She came by 2-3 times a week, made sure I was eating, made sure I wasn't drowning in my own grief. But the one who showed up the most, that was Travis, my nephew, Ray's boy, 29 years old, and he'd been like a son to me since Ray walked out. I helped pay for his community college, took him fishing when he was a teenager. When he got married the first time, that didn't last. I was the one who stood next to him and told him it would be all right. After Connie passed, Travis started coming by every few days, brought groceries, helped me sort through some of her things when I couldn't face it alone, sat with me on the porch and let me talk about her until the sun went down. "Uncle Earl," he'd say, "you're not alone. I'm here." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was the boy I helped raise. What I didn't know, what I couldn't see because my eyes were clouded with grief, was that Travis had changed. The back injury 2 years ago, the pills they gave him for the pain, the way those pills stopped working and he needed more, needed something stronger, needed things I didn't even know existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, I trusted him. I gave him a key to my house. I let him come and go as he pleased. And when I was sitting in my office trying to focus on paperwork, he was in the next room taking pictures of my bank statements. 6 weeks before that IRS meeting, I got a letter from the mail from Capital One. "Congratulations, your personal loan application has been approved for $85,000.
I read that letter 3 times. Then I read it again. I have never applied for a personal loan in my entire life. Connie and I believed in saving up for what we needed. If we couldn't afford something, we waited until we could. That's just how we were raised. But this letter had my name on it, my address, an account number I'd never seen. I called Capital One that afternoon, sat on hold for 45 minutes, listening to that elevator music they play, feeling my chest get tighter with every passing minute. When I finally got a human being on the line, she confirmed it. Someone had applied for a loan in my name. Online application, submitted 3 weeks prior. The email address on the application wasn't mine. The checking account where the funds were supposed to go? Never heard of it. She asked me if I wanted to report it as fraud. I said yes, but even as I was giving her the information, my skip tracer brain was already working. Someone with access to my documents, someone who knew my social security number, my date of birth, my mother's maiden name, someone close. I hung up the phone and sat in my office for a long time. The sun went down outside my window. I didn't turn on the lights. The phone records I pulled the next week would later prove everything, but at that moment I didn't know what I was looking at. All I knew was that someone in my life had decided I was an easy mark. I started with what I knew, basic skip tracer work. You don't jump to conclusions, you gather evidence, you build the case. First thing I did was pull my credit report, all 3 bureaus. Connie had set up credit monitoring years ago. She was always the careful one, and I'd kept paying for it even after she passed. What I found made my stomach turn. 2 new credit cards had been opened in my name in the past 3 months. 1 Visa, 1 MasterCard. The Visa had $12,000 in charges on it, cash advances, electronics purchases, gas stations on the north side of Tulsa, neighborhoods I haven't driven through in years. The application addresses for both cards? My house. The email addresses? Not mine. Someone was living a whole financial life under my name, and I'd had no idea. Next, I pulled my phone records, landline and cell, going back 6 months. And there it was, calls to Capital One that I never made, 4 of them, all from my home phone, all placed on days when I was out of the house. 2 of those days I remembered specifically because Travis had offered to stay at the house and keep an eye on things while I ran errands. There were other numbers too, burner phones, prepaid cells that you buy at gas stations and throw away when you're done. I know those numbers when I see them, tracked enough of them over the years. I requested copies of the loan application from Capital One. Took 2 weeks to arrive. When I finally held it in my hands, I went straight to the signature line. The D was wrong. My D has a specific loop to it, a little flourish that Connie used to tease me about. "You sign your name like you're royalty," she'd say, laughing. This D was flat, practiced, but flat. Someone had tried to copy my signature and almost got it right. Almost. I made photocopies, put the originals in a folder, and for the first time I let myself think the name I'd been avoiding. Travis. But thinking it and proving it are 2 different things. I needed more. I needed someone who could tell me what had been going on with my nephew while I was drowning in grief. That's when I ran into Keith Bowman. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was pumping gas at the Quick Trip on 41st Street when a voice behind me said, "Mr. Dunning, Earl Dunning." I turned around. Young guy, early 30s, built like he played football in high school. Took me a second, but then I placed him. Keith, Travis's best friend since they were 16. He'd been the best man at Travis's first wedding. "Keith," I said, "good to see ya. How you been?" He didn't smile. Something in his eyes looked worried. "How's Travis doing? I haven't heard from him in months." "Travis? He's been good. Comes by the house all the time. Been a real help since Connie passed." And that's when Keith's face went white, just drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. "Mr. Dunning," he said, real quiet, "we need to talk." He looked around the gas station like he was afraid someone might be listening. "Not here. Can you meet me somewhere?" I said yes. We agreed on a diner on the south side, neutral territory. What Keith told me over coffee and pie that afternoon would crack this whole thing wide open. He told me about Travis's back injury, about the pills, about the addiction that had taken hold and wouldn't let go. He told me Travis had borrowed $3,000 from him 8 months ago and never paid it back. He told me Travis had stolen his grandmother's ring right out of his house. And he told me something else. Travis had been fired at the car dealership where he worked 6 months prior, caught stealing from customer deposits. They didn't press charges because Marlene begged them not to. "I should have warned you sooner," he said. "I should have called, but I didn't know he was coming around your place. I didn't know he was—" He stopped, swallowed hard. What has he done? I showed him the loan application, the credit card statements, the phone records. Keith closed his eyes. That's the same thing he did to his mother. Small amounts at first, then bigger. I asked if he could put me in touch with the dealership manager, the one who fired Travis. "Yeah," Keith said, "I can do that. His name is Don Westbrook. He'll talk to you." I thanked Keith for the coffee. Then I went home to make some calls. But when I pulled into my driveway that night, something felt wrong. The porch light was off. I always leave it on. I walked up to the front door. It was unlocked. My heart was pounding as I stepped inside. Living room looked okay. Kitchen looked okay. But when I got to my office, the room was ransacked. Papers everywhere. Desk drawers pulled out and dumped on the floor. My computer tower had been moved, files deleted, and the folder with all my evidence, the loan applications, the phone records, the credit card statements, gone. I stood in the middle of my ransacked office and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not even anger, clarity. See, whoever did this thought they were smart, thought they were covering their tracks, but they made a mistake, a big one. They forgot who I was. 30 years of skip tracing teaches you things. It teaches you that people lie, that documents disappear, that the evidence you need today might not be there tomorrow, so you prepare. You make copies, and you store them somewhere safe. Connie used to call me paranoid. She'd watch me photocopy every important document, seal it in an envelope, and drive it to the bank. "Earl," she'd say, shaking her head, "who's going to steal our tax returns?" I'd tell her, "You never know. You just never know." Every piece of evidence I'd gathered, the loan applications, the phone records, the credit card statements, I had copied and locked in a safe deposit box at Arvest Bank on 71st Street, the same box where we kept our marriage license, the deed to the house, and Connie's grandmother's pearls. Travis didn't know about that box. Nobody did, except me and the bank manager. So when I looked at that mess on my office floor, I didn't panic. I just smiled, because now I knew for certain who I was dealing with. And more importantly, I knew he was scared. Scared people make mistakes. That's another thing 30 years taught me. I called the police that night, filed a report. The officer who came out took pictures, asked some questions, and told me what I already knew. Without witnesses or security footage, there wasn't much they could do. But I wasn't counting on the police to solve this for me. I was counting on myself. The next morning, I drove to the bank and verified my backup documents were still there. They were. Then I called Keith and asked him for Don Westbrook's number. Don was the manager at the dealership where Travis had worked, the one who caught him stealing from customer deposits. We arranged to meet at his office that Thursday afternoon. What Don told me confirmed everything Keith had said, and more. Travis was one of my best salesmen, Don said. We were sitting in his office, door closed, blinds drawn. "What happened?" I asked. Don leaned back in his chair. I started noticing discrepancies in the deposit records, small amounts at first, 20 here, 50 there. I thought it was a clerical error. Then I pulled the security footage.
He paused, rubbed his eyes. Travis would take cash deposits from customers, pocket part of it, and alter the paperwork. He got away with it for almost 6 months before I caught on. How much total? Just over $8,000. I asked why he didn't press charges. Don shook his head. His mother came to see me, Marlene. She was crying, begging me not to ruin his life, said he had a problem, said he was going to get help. She paid back every cent he stole, out of her own pocket. He looked at me with something like pity in his eyes. I take it he didn't get help? No, I said, he didn't. Don gave me copies of the internal investigation documents, time-stamped, signed, evidence of a pattern. I added them to my folder. Now here's the part that still keeps me up at night. Not what Travis did. I'd seen worse from strangers. What got to me was what happened with my own daughter. After the break-in, I told Lisa everything, sat her down at the kitchen table, spread out the evidence, or at least the backups of it, and walked her through what I'd found. The fraudulent loans, the credit cards, the phone records, Travis's history at the dealership. She listened, didn't interrupt. When I was done, she sat there for a long moment, staring at the papers. Then she said something that felt like a knife between my ribs. "Dad, are you sure you're not just, I don't know, looking for someone to blame?" I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "Since Mom died, you've been different, more suspicious, more withdrawn. Travis has been there for you, and now you're accusing him of this?" She shook her head. "Maybe you're seeing things that aren't there." I tried to explain, showed her the forged signature, pointed out the D that was wrong. "Dad, that looks like your signature to me." "It's not. Maybe you just don't remember signing it. You've been under a lot of stress." My own daughter, looking me in the eye, calling me paranoid, suggesting my grief had clouded my judgment. I wanted to argue, wanted to slam my hand on the table and make her see the truth, but I didn't. I just sat there, feeling something break inside me. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay."
She left that night thinking I'd let it go, thinking her father was a grieving old man who'd lost his grip on reality. She was wrong, but it would take time for her to understand that. See, what I hadn't told Lisa was that Travis had already gotten to her. I found out later, after everything came out, that he'd called her 2 days before our conversation, told her I'd been acting strange, told her I'd accused him of stealing out of nowhere for no reason. "I'm worried about Uncle Earl," he'd said. "I think he might need help." He was setting up the narrative, laying the groundwork, making me look like the problem, so that when the truth finally came out, no one would believe me. It was smart, real smart. If I hadn't spent my whole career watching people lie, it might have worked. But Travis underestimated me. They always do. After Lisa left that night, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and thought about Connie. What would she tell me to do? I could hear her voice clear as day. "Earl, you've never backed down from a hard case. Don't start now." So I didn't. The next morning, I contacted the IRS Fraud Division. See, most people in my situation would go to the local police, file a report, hope for the best. But I knew better. Local cops are overworked and underfunded. A family fraud case? It could sit in a pile for months, years even. But federal fraud? Tax evasion? That gets attention. The loan Travis applied for in my name, the $85,000, that money was reported as income on my Social Security number. Income I never received, but income I'd be expected to pay taxes on. That made it a federal matter. I spent 3 days preparing my documentation, every piece of evidence, every phone record, every forged signature. I organized it the way I used to organize case files for attorneys, clean, chronological, undeniable. Then I made the call. The agent I spoke with was named Patricia Holloway, 15 years with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. She listened to my story without interrupting, asked a few pointed questions, and then said the words I'd been waiting to hear. "Mr. Dunning, we're going to open an investigation. I'd like you to come in for a formal interview." And then she said something else. "We're also going to need to speak with the individual you believe is responsible." I asked if I could be present for that conversation. She said typically no, victims aren't present when suspects are interviewed. "With respect," I said, "I'm not a typical victim. I've worked with law enforcement for 30 years. I've testified in federal court more times than I can count, and I have evidence that I'd like to present personally." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Let me see what I can arrange," she said. 2 weeks later, I got the call. The meeting was set for Thursday morning at the Federal Building in downtown Tulsa. Travis had been summoned separately. He had no idea I would be there. And neither did he know what I was bringing with me. If you're still here with me, I appreciate you more than you know. Hit that like button so this story can reach more people who need to hear it. Now, here's where I finally turned the tables. The morning of the meeting, I woke up at 5 a.m., couldn't sleep anyway. I put on my good suit, the charcoal gray one Connie bought me for our 30th anniversary. She always said I looked like a lawyer when I wore it. "Not a lawyer, just a man who finds the truth," I'd tell her. I loaded my evidence into a banker's box. Everything. The backups Travis didn't know existed, the credit card statements, the phone records, the loan application with the forged signature, the dealership documents from Don Westbrook, recordings I'd made on my phone of conversations with Travis. Oklahoma is a one-party consent state, so those were legal. Everything I'd spent the past 6 weeks gathering. I also had Keith on standby. He'd agreed to join by conference call if needed to testify about what Travis had done to him, and Don Westbrook had provided a written statement, notarized and signed. But the thing I was most proud of, my daughter Lisa was coming with me. It had taken 2 weeks, but I'd finally gotten through to her. Not by arguing, not by showing her more evidence, just by asking her one question. "Lisa, have you ever known me to lie about anything?" She thought about it, really thought. "No," she said finally, "I haven't." "Then why would I start now?" She didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, she came by the house and asked to see everything again. This time, she looked at it with different eyes. She noticed the wrong D on the signature. She noticed the dates on the phone records, days when Travis was at my house alone. She noticed the pattern. When she looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes. "Dad, I'm so sorry." "I know, sweetheart, I know." So on Thursday morning, Lisa drove me downtown. My son Brian wanted to be there too, but he couldn't get off work in Kansas City on short notice. He told me to call me the second it was over. We arrived at the Federal Building at 8:45, 15 minutes early. Agent Holloway met me in the lobby. She was a serious woman, mid-40s, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She shook my hand, then Lisa's. "Mr. Dunning, your nephew arrived about 10 minutes ago. He's in the conference room now. He thinks this is a routine interview about discrepancies on a tax return. He doesn't know I'm here?" "He does not." I picked up my banker's box and took my seat across from him. Lisa sat next to me. Agent Holloway sat at the head of the table, with another agent beside her, younger guy, taking notes. "Travis," I said, "we need to talk." He tried to recover, tried to put on that charming smile that had worked on so many people for so many years. "Look, whatever this is, I'm sure we can work it out. We're family, right?" "Family," I repeated. I let the word hang in the air for a moment. "Let me show you what family means to me."
I looked at Tyler. 3 days later, she was dead. And you showed up at my door, so helpful, so concerned, ready to finish what you started. Tyler's composure finally cracked. "You're a senile old man," he shouted. "Nobody's going to believe you. I'm trying to help you." He lunged toward me, reaching for the diary. Detective Chen stepped forward. "Tyler Mitchell, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. We're also reopening the investigation into Nancy Mitchell's death." 2 officers moved in. Tyler struggled, shouted, called me names I won't repeat. But it didn't matter. The handcuffs clicked into place. The investors sat frozen, watching the young man they'd been about to trust get dragged out of the dining room in handcuffs. As Tyler passed me, he stopped struggling for just a moment. His eyes met mine. "She was going to ruin everything," he hissed, "just like you." Detective Chen pulled him away before I could respond. But I heard what he said, and I knew in that moment that Nancy's death wasn't suicide. I couldn't prove it, maybe I never would, but I knew. My wife had died because she tried to protect me, and my grandson had killed her for it. The dining room was silent. The investors gathered their things and left without a word. Patricia Holland stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. Frank put his hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Harry." I looked at the diary in my hands, Nancy's handwriting, her last words. We did it, all of us. The weeks after Tyler's arrest were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and sleepless nights. But this time, I wasn't drowning, I was fighting. Tyler was denied bail. The judge cited flight risk and the evidence of tampering with my medication. For the first time in over a year, I felt safe in my own home. The charges stacked up quickly: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder abuse, and because of the brake line, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. Detective Chen and her team did thorough work. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered became part of the official case file. Tyler's lawyer tried to negotiate, claimed Tyler was under financial stress, said he'd never intended to hurt anyone, said he was sorry. I sat in that courtroom and listened to those excuses, and I thought about Nancy, about her diary, about those final words she wrote before she died. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. The investigation into Nancy's death was reopened, just like Detective Chen promised. Investigators reviewed the original case file, interviewed witnesses, examined the timeline. In the end, they couldn't prove murder. The medical examiner said the evidence was inconclusive. There was no physical proof that Tyler had been in the house that night, no witnesses, no confession beyond that one hissed comment in the country club dining room. But the detective told me something I'll never forget. "Mr. Mitchell, I believe you. I believe he did something, but believing isn't the same as proving, and I'm sorry we can't give you that closure. Some questions don't get answered. Some justice doesn't get served. You learn to live with that, or you don't live at all." Tyler pleaded guilty to avoid trial. His lawyer knew the evidence was overwhelming. A trial would only make things worse. The sentence came down on a gray Tuesday morning in March. 8 years in state prison. Full restitution of $47,000, though the judge acknowledged I'd probably never see all of it. Tyler's assets were frozen. His precious country club membership was canceled. His fancy car was repossessed. When the judge read the sentence, Tyler stood there in his orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. No expensive suit, no charming smile, just a 28-year-old man who'd thrown away everything for money he didn't earn and a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He didn't look at me, not once. They led him out in handcuffs. I watched him go, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just tired, bone-deep tired. I still visit Nancy's grave every Sunday. I tell her about the case, about Tyler, about the justice we got, and the questions that will never have answers. I think she'd be proud. I hope she's at peace. Some days, I almost am. The aftermath with my family was complicated. That's the polite way to put it. My daughter, Karen, Tyler's mother, refused to believe her son was guilty. She called me the night of the arrest, screaming through the phone that I'd destroyed her boy's life, that I was a bitter old man who couldn't accept that Nancy had taken her own life, that I'd manufactured evidence to punish Tyler for being successful. I tried to explain, showed her the documents, the bank records, the diary. She wouldn't look at any of it. "You were always jealous of him," she said. "You couldn't stand that he was making something of himself." That was the last real conversation we had. She sends me a card at Christmas with nothing but her signature. I send one back the same way. I don't expect that to change. Some relationships can't survive the truth. Karen chose her son over the evidence, over her own mother's words. I've made my peace with losing her. Most days. But not every door closed. My son David, my younger child, lives in Indianapolis with his wife and 2 girls. We'd drifted apart over the years. Tyler had told David I didn't want visitors, told me that David was too busy to call. He'd played us against each other, and we'd both believed it. 2 weeks after Tyler's arrest, David drove 3 hours to see me. He stood on my porch with tears in his eyes. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have been here. I should have known something was wrong." I hugged my son for the first time in 4 years. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." David calls every Sunday now. He and his wife bring the girls to visit once a month. My granddaughters are 12 and 15, smart kids, good kids. We're building something new. It's not the family I had before, but it's real. I sold the house in Westerly. Too many memories, too many ghosts. Every room reminded me of Nancy, and not all those memories were good anymore. Some were poisoned by what I'd learned, by the questions I couldn't answer. I moved to a smaller condo in German Village, a historic neighborhood in downtown Columbus. Brick streets, old buildings, quiet. The kind of place where you can walk to a coffee shop and nobody asks if you're doing okay. I started volunteering with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. Nothing official, just helping out with elder abuse cases, reading documents, spotting inconsistencies. The same skills that saved me, used to help others. The assistant prosecutor, a woman named Margaret Torres, told me I had a gift. "Mr. Mitchell, you see things other people miss. We could use more eyes like yours."
With your finances. The caregiver who asks too many questions about your accounts. The friend who suddenly needs a loan they can't quite explain. I tell them my story. Not all of it. Some parts are too personal, but enough. Enough to make them pay attention. Enough to make them check their credit reports and guard their documents. It feels good helping people. Feels like something Connie would be proud of. I still take skip tracing cases now and then. Not as many as before, but enough to keep my mind sharp. Last month, I tracked down a witness for a personal injury attorney in Oklahoma City. The month before that, I found a missing heir to an estate up in Bartlesville. Keith Bowman, Travis's old friend, the one who warned me, he comes by for poker night now. Every other Thursday, him and a few guys from my old bowling league. We play cards, drink beer, and lie about how good we used to be at things. Keith and I don't talk about Travis much anymore, but I think we both understand something without having to say it. Sometimes the people who hurt you bring other people into your life, people who matter. It's a strange kind of grace. I still live in the same house, still sleep on the same side of the bed even though the other side has been empty for almost 2 years now, still wear my wedding ring. Every Sunday morning, I drive out to Memorial Park Cemetery and visit Connie's grave. I bring flowers when I can. Sometimes I just sit on the little bench nearby and talk to her. I tell her about the kids, about the cases I'm working, about the fraud seminars and the poker nights, and the way the light hits the kitchen window in the morning. "We got 'em, sweetheart," I told her the Sunday after Travis was sentenced. "The kids are okay. I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me." I sat there for a long time that day, watched the clouds move across the Oklahoma sky, felt the wind on my face. "I'll see you when I see you," I said finally, not rushing it, still got some good years left. I meant that too. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry, if I hate Travis for what he did. Honestly, I don't have the energy for hate. It's too heavy, takes too much out of you. What I feel is something more like sadness. Sadness for the boy he used to be. Sadness for the man he could have become. Sadness that addiction and desperation turned someone I loved into someone I didn't recognize. But I also feel something else, something that took me a long time to name. Peace. Not the kind of peace where everything is perfect and nothing hurts. That's not real. That's a fairy tale. I mean the kind of peace where you know you did the right thing, where you stood up for yourself when it would have been easier to look away, where you protected what you and your wife built together, even when your own family called you crazy for doing it. That kind of peace. They thought I was weak because I was grieving. They thought I was slow because I was 55. They thought I was an easy mark because I lived alone and missed my wife. They were wrong. I'm still here, still standing, still finding people who don't want to be found. And if you're out there right now going through something like this, if someone you trust is making you doubt yourself, if the numbers don't add up, if something just doesn't feel right, I want you to know something. You're not crazy, you're not paranoid, and you're not alone. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't let anyone tell you you're too old to fight back, because you're not. So let me ask you, was I right to do what I did?
Or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit close to home, like the video, subscribe to John Vengeance, and tap that notification bell so you never miss when justice gets served. Stay fierce, because every story deserves its moment of sweet revenge.